Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Alex, your course facilitator. Today, we are moving into one of the most interesting and practical topics in Pragmatics. Our lecture is on Implicature. This module is all about what we call reading between the lines. Now, in our last module, we explored the cooperative principle and Grice's conversational maxims. We talk about these as the unwritten rules we follow to have a clear, effective conversation. But what happens when we intentionally break one of those rules? This is where our topic, implicature, comes in. An implicature is the implied meaning that a speaker conveys, and that a listener has to infer, precisely when one of those maxims is flouted or broken on purpose. It is truly the art of reading between the lines. Let's look at this simple example. Your friend asks, "Do you want to come to the party tonight?" And you reply, "I have to study for an exam." Think about it. Did you actually say the word no? No. But did your friend understand no? Absolutely. That implied no, the meaning behind the words, is the implicature. You are implying you cannot go. So, why does this matter? Why don't we just say exactly what we mean, all the time? Well, implicature serves three very important functions in our communication. First, it bridges the gap. Implicature is the bridge that connects semantics, which is the literal, dictionary meaning of words, and pragmatics, which is the intended meaning in a specific context. It connects what is said to what is meant. Second, it enriches communication. This is what allows us to be subtle, to be polite, and to use humor or sarcasm. If we had no implicature, we would have no irony. And third, it creates efficiency. This might sound strange, but it's true. If we had to explicitly state every single thought and intention, our conversations would be incredibly long, monotonous, and often very, very rude. For you, as English majors, and for any student learning a foreign language, mastering this skill is absolutely crucial for navigating social interactions and truly understanding what native speakers mean. Alright, so here is our goal for today. By the end of this module, you should be able to: first, define implicature. Second, distinguish between the two main types, conversational and conventional implicature. Third, explain the process. How do we, as listeners, infer these conversational implicatures? Fourth, analyze examples of implicature in different contexts. And finally, evaluate the important role that implicature plays in all of our everyday communication. So, let's get our formal definition. Implicature is a core concept in pragmatics. It refers to the implied or suggested meaning of an utterance, a meaning that goes beyond its literal, word-for-word meaning. It is the extra information that a speaker intends to convey, and that a listener is able to infer. Now, it is very important to understand that implicature is not one single thing. It's split into two main types. On the one hand, we have conversational implicature. This is the one we've been talking about. It's a meaning that we infer based on the context of the conversation and the assumption that the speaker is still trying to be cooperative. These are dynamic. They can be cancelled or changed in a different context. On the other hand, we have conventional implicature. This one is different. It's a meaning that is always associated with a specific word or phrase, regardless of the context. It's part of the conventional meaning of the words themselves, and they are not cancelable. So, here's the key difference: a conversational implicature is all about the speaker's intention in a specific situation, while a conventional implicature is a fixed feature of the language itself. Let's focus on the big one first, conversational implicature. This is where we are truly reading between the lines. This type of implicature is created when a speaker flouts, or, as we said, intentionally breaks, a maxim. But they don't do it to be confusing. They do it to imply something. The listener's job is to recognize that a rule was broken and then use the context, and their shared understanding with the speaker, to infer the hidden meaning. These are sometimes called particularized conversational implicatures. That's a technical term, but it just means they are particular to a specific context. The same words said in a different situation might create a totally different implicature, or no implicature at all. So, how does this flouting work? Let's go through the maxims one by one. First, flouting the maxim of quantity. Remember, this maxim says to give just the right amount of information, not too much, not too little. So, we flout this by giving either too little or too much information. The listener has to infer that this choice is meaningful. Look at example 1, too little information. Person A asks, "Did you finish the research paper?" Person B says, "I wrote the introduction and the conclusion." What is B implying? By only mentioning the introduction and conclusion, B is deliberately not giving all the information. I will easily infer that B did not finish the main body of the paper. We can also do the opposite. Look at too much information. A mother asks, "How did your presentation go today?" The student then gives an hour-long, overly detailed account of every single slide, every question, and every feeling they had. This is far more information than was needed. The mother will likely infer that the student is very proud and wants to be praised for their work. So, how does this flouting work? Let's go through the maxims one by one. First, flouting the maxim of quantity. Remember, this maxim says to give just the right amount of information, not too much, not too little. So, we flout this by giving either too little or too much information. The listener has to infer that this choice is meaningful. Look at example 1, too little information. Person A asks, "Did you finish the research paper?" Person B says, "I wrote the introduction and the conclusion." What is B implying? By only mentioning the introduction and conclusion, B is deliberately not giving all the information. I will easily infer that B did not finish the main body of the paper. We can also do the opposite. Look at too much information. A mother asks, "How did your presentation go today?" The student then gives an hour-long, overly detailed account of every single slide, every question, and every feeling they had. This is far more information than was needed. The mother will likely infer that the student is very proud and wants to be praised for their work. Next, flouting the maxim of quality. This maxim is, be truthful. Do not say things you know to be false. We flout this maxim all the time. We do it when we say something that is obviously false, and we know the listener knows it's false. This is how we create sarcasm, irony, and hyperbole. Example 3 is classic sarcasm. It's a terrible, rainy day. Your friend says, "Wow, what great weather we're having." They are clearly flouting the maxim of quality by saying something untrue. You, the listener, understand they mean the exact opposite, that the weather is bad. Example 4 is hyperbole. I'm so hungry, I could eat a horse. This is also an obviously false claim. The listener isn't worried, they don't think you're literally going to eat a horse. They simply understand the implicature, you are very, very hungry. What about the maxim of relation? This one is simple, be relevant. We flout this maxim when our response is obviously irrelevant to the question. This forces the listener to search for a hidden connection. Look at example 5. A says, "I heard you got an F on your midterm." B responds, "I've been working on a new song." This is a complete change of subject. B is flouting the maxim of relation. I will immediately infer that B does not want to talk about the midterm, and that, yes, they probably did get an F. Example 6 shows how we use this for hinting. A professor asked a student to come to their office. The student says, "My car is in the shop." This is not a yes or no, it's flouting relation. The professor will infer the student wants to come but has no way to get there. It's a polite way of asking to reschedule or find another solution. And our final one, flouting the maxim of manner. This maxim says, be clear, be brief, be orderly. Avoid obscurity and ambiguity. We flout this when a speaker is intentionally obscure, ambiguous, or disorganized. The classic example is a vague recommendation letter. A professor writes a letter that only says, the student's performance was adequate. This is flouting the maxim of manner by being painfully vague. The person reading that letter will infer that the professor is being polite but has nothing positive to say about the student. Why? Because if the student was good, the professor would have been specific and positive. In this context, adequate is a code word for not very good. Okay. So, all of those were conversational implicatures. Now let's look at the other, simpler type, conventional implicature. Remember, these are not based on context. They are about the fixed meaning of words. They are not tied to the maxims, and they cannot be cancelled. Let's take the word but. Example, she is rich, but she is kind. The word but automatically carries an implicature of contrast. The listener infers that rich people are often not kind, and this person is an exception to that expectation. You can't cancel this. It would be a contradiction to say, she is rich, but she is kind, and there is no contrast. That makes no sense. Another one is even. Example, even the professor found the exam difficult. The implicature here, carried by the word even, is that this was unexpected. The exam was difficult, and it was surprising that the professor found it difficult, because professors are usually very knowledgeable. That meaning of unexpectedness is a fixed part of the word even. Here are just a few more quick examples. The words yet and still imply that a situation is expected to change or stop. If you say, it's 10 p.m., and he is still working, the implicature is that 10 p.m. is later than expected for him to be working. The word, therefore, implies a logical consequence. He studied hard, therefore he passed the exam. The implicature is that his passing is a direct, logical result of his studying. Many other conjunctions and discourse markers work this way, signaling relationships between ideas. So, let's zoom back out and put this all together. Implicature plays a massive role in our daily lives. We use it constantly to navigate our social world with grace and intelligence. We use it to be polite and tactful. Instead of a direct command like, close the door, we make an indirect request, could you please close the door? This shows respect. In professional contexts, this is essential, as being too direct can be seen as rude. We use it to be humorous or sarcastic. We say things that are untrue to create a comedic effect. This shared humor, which is based on understanding the implicature, helps to build social bonds. And we use it to avoid saying things directly, especially when the topic is sensitive. For example, instead of saying, I don't like your new hairstyle, a person might say, well, it's certainly different. The implicature is perfectly clear, but you have avoided a direct confrontation. In a professional setting, this is not just a nice skill to have, it is a key skill for success. Recognizing these subtleties is a form of social intelligence. Look at this workplace example. A manager says to a colleague, we had a very long meeting about the project. A new employee might just hear this as a fact, the meeting was long. But the implicature, signaled by the emphasis on long, is that the meeting was difficult, or not productive. Understanding these nuances is crucial for professional success. Alright, to finish up, let's review the key takeaways from today's module. First, implicature is essential. It bridges that critical gap between what is said and what is actually meant, making our communication rich and nuanced. Second, there are two main types, conversational, which depends on context, and conventional, which is fixed in the meaning of the words themselves. Third, we create these implied meanings by flouting maxims. We intentionally break the rules of quantity, quality, relation, and manner to send a message. And finally, this is all a form of social intelligence. Mastering implicature is absolutely crucial for navigating social interactions, for success in professional settings, and for a deep, true understanding of native speakers. And that concludes our lecture on implicature. Thank you. I'd now be happy to take any questions you may have.